Hello, this is Eric Ogle, the Cdbg Program Director with the Office of Community and Rural Affairs. This recording is to provide clarification on the duplication of benefits form that we are requiring as part of round one of our 2021 Cdbg program. So this webinar, we are going to look not only at the duplication of benefits form, but also how the recent ARP allocations relate and how those requirements and Cdbg align. So to start with me is Andrea Kern, our Initiatives Director with OCRA.
Okay, so signed into law in March, the American Rescue Plan established the Coronavirus Local Fiscal Recovery Fund, which will provide direct funding from the federal government to metropolitan cities, non-entitlement units, and counties. Indiana communities are collectively set to receive around $1.28 billion in two tranches, with the first allocation dispersed by at least June 11th. State Board of Accounts issued a memo on March 18th concerning the accounting processes for these funds. That memo outlines that the governing body must adopt an ordinance establishing a local ARP funds account to receive the allocation prior to the May-June disbursement. That ordinance should specifically list the uses as described in ARP Section 603C that are applicable to the unit and that the unit envisions utilizing. Just to go over what those could be, one, to respond to the public health emergency caused by COVID-19, to provide assistance to households, small businesses, and nonprofits related to the negative economic impacts of COVID-19, to aid impacted industries such as tourism, travel, and hospitality, for premium pay up to $13 per hour, but not to exceed $25,000 to any individual employee, for grants to eligible private employers to provide hazard pay to essential workers, to provide government services to the extent of the reduction in revenue due to COVID-19 collected in the most recent full fiscal year prior to the emergency, to make necessary investments in water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure. That ordinance should also reference a plan which will provide the details for the use of these funds. The plan should be laid out in a way that corresponds to the elements as laid out in Section 603 of ARP, which are the points I just went over. And the ordinance and plan may be amended as any other ordinance or plan as long as the amendment complies with Section 603. Just as a reminder, communities have until December 31st of 2024 to spend these funds, so you are encouraged to take a holistic approach to planning for these funds. A plan is not only required by ARP, but is essential to assessing both your government operations and what your community needs. Okay, and now Eric is going to go over how those ARP expectations align with Cdbg.
Yeah, so over the last year, we've had multiple stimulus funds being received by our local communities and local units of government. And so with Cdbg and many other federal funds, we have a thing called duplication of benefit. And basically what it says is that benefits cannot be duplicated within the same kind of funds. So basically you can't use one set of funds and then use another set of federal funds for the same thing. And so with Cdbg, we have to make sure that all stimulus funds are obligated and accounted for prior to awarding new regular Cdbg funds. So this goes down to an issue of what are the unobligated funds that you have from the stimulus. So, and there's a couple different ways that we can look at them and consider them obligated. One, it could be that you've already obligated them and expended them for a project or another thing, or that you are involved in a planning effort and have a local ordinance that outlines that planning effort. So when we look at the planning effort, we look at two types of things. Is there already a plan in place, such as a comprehensive plan that has been, it has a timeline, was involved in a public process where residents got input, and it includes partnerships and things like that. Or if you don't have a plan already, have you taken official action and outlined how you will go about a planning process? So those are the two things we're looking for when we have funds that have not been obligated or expended. So as a reminder, one of the things OCRA really encourages communities to do, and for us, we require as part of our comprehensive planning efforts, is that planning be comprehensive, holistic, community-led, and continuous. So comprehensive means that it goes, looks at everything related to that and kind of gives you all the different options that you're looking at. So it looks at you as a whole community. Holistic, depending on the topic, we're looking at everything for that topic. Comprehensive and holistic, very similar, but they are different. The big one that I want to highlight is community-led. Now, this is something that I really want to highlight because we've gotten a lot of questions on this. Community-led means that there's active and ongoing engagement with the residents of that community. We know many elected officials, you talk with your residents and you know what your residents are asking for and things like that. That's what we're looking for, but just doing it in more a direct and intentional manner. It's including your residents' input, taking that into consideration, and outlining how that was considered. And then continuous. One of the things that we always look at is when a plan is done, is it just going to sit on a shelf? Hopefully, no. Unfortunately, that does happen. But with this, we're really encouraging, have an idea and include in your plan and your planning effort how you are going to continuously look at this plan and update it as you go. So as you're getting projects done, look at, okay, well, here's the next project, but what are other projects that we may need to relook at, or we need to, look at adding into this plan, or do we need to redo the entire planning effort because we're done with all of the plan that we've already done? That's what we mean by continuous. So that's what we're looking for with this. Now, with this next round, we have a couple of defined expectations and timeline to determine all of this. So this is really how all of this interrelates together. So by proposal, which is due on 4/29, so the end of this month, we need the duplication of benefit form completed, and I'll go over in a second how to complete that, and also a local resolution that outlines how you will be using any unobligated funds or planning for any unobligated funds. We are asking for this by proposal so that we can review it and identify any potential duplication issues, and then work with you all as a community to hopefully address those or mitigate them by application. So you may have a duplication issue at proposal. That does not mean that you will become ineligible for this round. It means that we will have a further discussion between OCRA and you as a community to figure out the best way to move forward. At a minimum, in the resolution that we're asking for, we need to see that the community will engage in a planning effort that follows OCRA's planning ethos, and that's that thing, the comprehensive, holistic, community-led, continuous planning effort. So then, by application, if there were any issues identified at the proposal, you will want to have a revised duplication of benefits form and resolution. If there weren't any issues, you can use the same forms. So you can either update them or use the same ones. Additionally, by application, we are asking for at least a draft ordinance that outlines your receiving of ARP funds and lists all of the elements identified in Section 603. Now, again, based on the State Board of Accounts guidance, you are going to need that by the end of May. So this is something that you should have, or at least be in the process of having. Again, because of that timeline set by SBOA, we really are encouraging you to have at least one reading of the ordinance by application. So if you haven't already passed the ordinance, really we are encouraging you to have at least one reading, because again, that kind of aligns with that timeline from the State Board of Accounts. So those are the expectations. Again, this is not a, you have to have this by proposal or you're out. This is, we need this by proposal so we can work with you to mitigate or address any issues, because we're trying to make sure that there is no chance in the future that someone's going to come and say, oh, there was a duplication, so this community has to repay the Cdbg funds that they received. We don't want repayment, because, and we know you all don't want repayment. So that's why we are asking for these pieces of information. So
and I just want to add.
Go ahead, Andrea.
I just want to add two more things, which is that the ordinance requires that you outline a plan, but that plan can, the ordinance and the plan can both be amended throughout the entire process. So you have really until December 31st, 2024 to have all of that finalized. What we're asking for is just that you've begun thinking about how you're going to use those funds and that you've outlined that, but you're not held to it. You can change that through your regular process throughout the next 3 years. And then I also wanted to add that in partnership with AIM and Association of Indiana Counties, we are going to be offering a webinar with author, urbanist, and scholar Bruce Katz from the NOAC Metro Finance Lab at Drexel University on April 20th from 2 to 3 p.m. That webinar will cover how Indiana communities can plan for and best leverage these funds, and invitations will be sent to our email mailing list later this week. We are also developing an educational best practices guide for communities to utilize when planning for these funds. In addition, we are developing a separate program to incentivize communities to engage in that comprehensive, holistic, and community-led planning effort for these funds that will also include strategies to leverage funding provisions from across the entire American Rescue Plan Act. We will announce more details during the webinar on the 20th about that, both of those things.
So yeah, so as you see, there are multiple resources coming out with this. And really, again, this is a once in a lifetime chance. So, you know, take the time and engage, you know, in this comprehensive planning effort. And take advantage of these resources. Take the time to take advantage of some of these resources. So specific to the duplication of benefit form, we tried to make this form as easy as possible. It is all information the clerk treasurers should already have. It's information that they would be required to have by State Board of Accounts. And so it's really straightforward. First off, we look at the federal funds received. So in that, we break it down by the 3 stimulus acts that were provided. So CARES, the December 2020 Consolidated Appropriation, and then the American Rescue Plan. Now, you would not have yet received your funds. However, because they have announced the allocations, we have to consider those that they have been received by you. So you will want to put your anticipated amount down there. Additionally, we are asking that you to identify whether you received any funds direct from a federal agency or passed through the state. So those that received funds through the CARES Act from IFA, you will mark that down as passed through the state. Lastly, we have an other category. We know there are some other stimulus funds that have been provided to communities, whether that be from direct from a federal agency or from the state, and just record those in that other. So this could be an EDA grant or something along those lines. So you will just, any funds you have received. The next area is obligated. So for the purpose of this, obligated means that the funds have been committed by an official act. So this would be that your board, your governing board, voted to obligate or allocate the funds to a specific project or a specific use. That use could also be a plan. That your board has said, we are going to obligate these plans or these funds by going through this planning process, and here's the timeline for that planning process. So as you look at this, again, it's the same, broken down with the same stimulus and the same direct from a federal agency or pass-through, but what is obligated? Now, what we are going to look at is any funds that are not obligated. Again, if you have funds that have not been obligated, we are looking for that resolution that outlines that they will be used and obligated through a planning effort that is in line with OCRA's planning ethos. So it is just a resolution that we are looking for. And then finally, we really, while most of this information is available publicly, and most grant administrators could complete this for communities, we are asking that the clerk treasurer and the community complete this form themselves. You as the community are going to have the most up-to-date and accurate information because the publicly available information is always a little lagged. So we are asking that the clerk treasurer, work with the grant administrator to get this form completed with the most accurate information at the time of proposal. And of course, your chief elected official and clerk treasurer need to sign off on this form. The form is available with all of the other 2021 round one resources on the main Cdbg page, which can be found at in.gov/OCRA, OCRA/CDBG. So,
okay, we just want to.
Go ahead, Andrea.
We just wanted to reiterate that this is new to everyone and to us, and things are moving quickly with these funds, and especially as it's related to federal stimulus funds. So we are all doing our best to make sure that communities don't get into a situation where they are expected to repay any of the funds, that whether those are CDBG funds or ARP funds. And then Eric?
Yeah, and so with that, as you're looking at your ARP funds and going through that planning process, OCRA is building up its resources for our rural communities. Andrea is going to be our point of contact and our expert on ARP for OCRA. So please don't hesitate to reach out to her. And we will be announcing more resources as those become available. But also, as you have questions just about round one or anything, please don't forget to reach out to your community liaisons. They are a great resource, and in many cases, they know your community much better than I would or Andrea or anything like that. So they can also provide a lot of insight, advice, and best practices to you. Lastly, I do want to highlight that we do have a new Northeast CL. Her name is Allie. She just started. So for those of you in the Northeast, definitely would encourage you to reach out to her. But you can also still reach out to Christmas with questions, and both Allie and Christmas will work together to get you all any answers or advice that you may need. So again, I just want to, really um, encourage all of you to take the time to, review the funding that you're receiving and look at everything as you are planning to apply for CDBG, and engage in this planning process. This is, again, it's a once in a lifetime situation for many of our communities. And in some cases, the amount that is being received can really be transformative. Um, and so take that time, get the community input, and identify how best to use those funds. It may not be for CDBG. Many of you already have your local match determined. So it may be best to, wait and go through the planning process and determine, how to use those ARP funds outside of your CDBG application. And that's where we really just want everyone to have a good opportunity to determine the best use of these ARP funds that for their community. So thank you all very much. Again, if you have any questions, please let us know, and have a great day.